What's up, everybody? It's Cy the Bourbon Guy, and welcome back to another whiskey review. Today, we are going to take a look at one of my absolute favorite craft distilleries right now, Hard Truth. Hard Truth is actually based out of Nashville, Indiana. Shout out to Indiana, doing some great things. And their Sweet Mash Rye put them on the map, I feel like not only for me, but for the whiskey community. I feel like that was the one that really got me interested, not even just in Hard Truth, but in rye in general. And on top of that, other people around the country seem to be really into Hard Truth. That Sweet Mash Rye just, I don't know, there was something about it that's special. Really fantastic bottle. I didn't really know much about Hard Truth at the time. Didn't really dabble that much into rye whiskey. They changed the game for all that for me. So Hard Truth has been doing some fantastic things for a while now. And this, I mean, it's just part of their, you know, what's next for them type of deal, where they're going to do a finishing series, and part of that exploration into finishing and what else can they do. And really coming up here in a few days, as of this recording, they're going to release their bourbon, and they have the bottle to bond, and they have the three varieties of it. And it's just between the 4 grain, the wheated, and the rye mash bill. I haven't got a chance to try it, but I don't know. Everything they've done so far with their rye has been absolutely amazing. So when they're distilling and when they are doing all the quality control measures to see where this whiskey's at, if they've been able to do that and produce such a fantastic rye, I don't have any doubt with this bourbon that it's going to be, you know, up to par as well. Now, there's certain times where a craft distillery will do this, where they'll get into rye maybe first and then go into bourbon. And me being the bourbon drinker instead of a rye, I still like ryes, especially nowadays, but sometimes I just am like, it's great that you're making a bourbon, I prefer the rye. Or if you try to go into a finishing, you know, side of things like they're doing, I kind of always question that too, from my own perspective as a consumer. Like, am I going to like this that much more? Is it a different experience than the original rye, or what direction are we going? So I'm excited to explore this today, and just kind of like news with myself and news with the channel. As of this recording, tomorrow I will actually be down at the distillery and get a chance to try their different bourbons, talk with the master distiller down there, and I'm really looking forward to that visit. And I think it's just gonna be a great time. You know, I've messaged with a few of the people behind the scenes and had conversations that way, but to go down there, see the distillery for myself, talk with the master distiller, meet the people that I've interacted with on their accounts, you know, it's going to be a fantastic time. And I thank you, Hard Truth, for having me. Disclaimer for this video, as I do anytime a bottle is sent, this was actually sent to me from Hard Truth. So you see, you know, all the little notifications letting you know that, that this was sent to me. But just like any bottle that's ever sent to me, I always ask for expectations before you send it. What do you expect? If you want me to say this is the best whiskey I've ever had and it's not, I'm not going to do it. Don't send me the bottle. But if you're sending it to me because you're just curious of what my thoughts are, or, you know, you want me to share that with my audience, that's a little different. But, you know, we always stay authentic around here, and that's what matters more than any free bottle of whiskey ever. But all that stuff out the way, let's get into it. So this one is the Sweet Mash Rye, but it's finished in their Spanish PX Brandy casks. So I think I got it all right there. And finishing to me is just one of those things. I'm not really against it. Like, what else, you know, there's some people out there that are just diehard against finishing whiskey. I'm not at all. I think that opens up the door for a lot of different people, and I think it makes it a little bit more approachable even for certain people, or whatever the case is. I don't know why people are so against it. Maybe they're just more against it being considered, you know, almost like having its own category. I don't know. But the way I look at it is, you're able to, if it's done right, you're able to tap into just certain characteristics of that whiskey, and it just, again, changes the experience for the better, or it can, as long as it's finished right. I know that there's times where you take a whiskey maybe that's not as good and you're trying to hide the flaws by finishing it, and then sometimes that finish overpowers the whiskey itself. I'm not a fan of those. But if it's done right, and we've talked about this in prior videos with barrel bourbon, if it's done right, it can absolutely enhance that whiskey that was already good whiskey going in. So enough talking. Let's get to this bottle. So this one is 114 proof, and on the nose for me, it's like a fruity, cedar, the sweetness, like the maple syrup sweetness. That cedar's there for sure for me. The fruitiness is there, but it's definitely, I can tell we're going into a sweeter range with this. But that there's something about that wood note and the fruit that still balances it. So it's kind of a weird note because of the syrup can almost feel like more like a sugar sweet, but the fruit is almost like more of a natural sweet. And again, I'm splitting hairs at this point. It's sweet. There's even some, for me, like a slight honey. So again, sweet, but really not like overpowering sweet, almost leather. There's some type of, but not like a heavy leather. And again, I'm being very particular, but the nose to me is one that's very interesting. I think I could tell immediately that because of the finishing of this, the nose, there's a lot there. So I may be giving a lot of notes, and it's not because I'm trying to pick apart the whiskey and, you know, any of that type of stuff or come up with crazy obscure notes. I'm really just trying to prove the point that this finish is coming through on the nose and it's making it a little bit more complex. It's not just caramel, vanilla, oak. There is a lot more going on here, you know, and even beyond the rye spice. I think it would be hard for me to identify this as a rye if I was doing it blind, regardless of what it smells like. Let's taste it. That's the true test. You buy a bottle of whiskey to taste it. So let's go for it. Cheers. So I think on the palate, I think I can identify that there's rye here. It's pretty much following the nose. So the wood is there. It's not as much cedar, maybe. I mean, it's still a cedar, definitely a wood note for sure. The fruit still carries through, but there's almost like a nuttiness, and I would classify this almost like an almond type of nut instead of like a peanut or something. But there's almost like a toasted almond type of note there. But again, the fruit and the wood, there's a lot going on in this whiskey. I want to keep going with it. Let's try it. So to take a few sips and then to go back to the nose, which I always encourage people to do, because in my opinion, I feel like you can pull more out because now you've tasted it and all your senses are kind of working together. To go back to the nose, it's so, and I've said this in a few other videos. I don't know how else to explain this. The nose on it seems like it has a thick texture, like a maple syrup. And I never know how to actually articulate that sense, but rich, there's depth. There's just a lot going on with the nose in a good way. Really rich and complex and not overly complex to where there's all these different notes or all these different flavors, just all separate. To me, these notes are coming together and creating a great experience. The nose, the palate, it follows through. It's not like the nose is just one experience and then I drink it and the palate's different. These notes are coming together and creating a very complex whiskey that works together to create a good experience. So anytime I do these reviews, to me, it's hard because I do sit down with these whiskeys prior to shooting these, but even when I sit with it, I still don't really give it enough time to what I feel like you can maybe capture the true essence of that whiskey. Sometimes with whiskeys, depending on the whiskey it is, you can sit with that whiskey for an hour, and over the hour, it evolves and it changes constantly as it continues to open up and all that other stuff. And so when I'm sitting down, whether it's writing a review or recording a video or whatever, I'm not truly giving it enough time to really do what it needs to do. This whiskey is one that I feel like if I gave it even more time, I bet it would keep unfolding. There's certain whiskeys that it's probably going to taste the same 5 minutes in as it does 30 minutes in as it does an hour in. Sometimes it's just not a good whiskey, in my opinion. But this one is one that's more of a roller coaster in terms of flavor. Not like I smelled this, then I get this crazy thing, then I go back and I get this crazy thing. It's just, again, all these different notes. Yes, I'm picking up different notes, but they're seeing how they come together and seeing what experience this is taking me on to show that complexity. I would love to sit with this for an hour and just keep going back to it every once in a while and take a sip and just see where we're at. This is definitely one I want to spend time with. This isn't one it's a a sip on something. And, you know, for me personally, a lot of times I go to like a Russell's Reserve. I like their single barrels, you know, things like that. The 10 years even good, you know, pretty much any Wild Turkey project. But there's certain bottles that I kind of go to as daily sippers, even though I don't drink every day. But it's kind of like that, you have that concept going. And then there's other whiskeys, in my opinion, that are more of like when I have the time. So whether it's like a Friday night or a weekend and I'm just relaxing at home, although I've got a newborn and a 3-year-old, so not much relaxing. But when you're sitting down and you have more time to actually enjoy something, and for me, whether it's music playing in the background or maybe it's just quiet and I'm watching a movie or whatever the case is, just to enjoy that whiskey and see how it changes, this would fall in that category for me. More of like a special occasion, and this is a limited release as well. So I think it's, even by that standard, it kind of still falls in that category. But sipping wise, I still think that this is something when friends come over, maybe I'd want them to try that because it's so different. If you're buying this and you're anticipating a typical rye, you're not going to get it. If you're buying this thinking of Kentucky straight bourbon, you're not going to get it. Obviously, this is a rye whiskey. Some ryes can still kind of lean towards that bourbon profile. This is not that. This is a unique product that has complexity, that has its own experience. And the thing that makes me think more about is pairing it with food. So I'm actually not a fan of drinking whiskey with dinner, as weird as that is. So like if I go out to eat, everybody knows that, oh, he's the bourbon guy. And when I don't get bourbon at dinner, sometimes people are like, you know, well, what are you doing, right? But for me, I'd rather enjoy bourbon on its own. I'll drink bourbon maybe after I finish my meal, or, you know, grab a rye or whatever the case is, whatever type of whiskey. But I'm just generally not a fan of drinking whiskey with food. This particular one, because of the notes that I'm getting off of this rye, and I'm sure it has everything to do with how they finished it, it almost reminds me of wine in a way which makes sense with the brandy finish, but it makes it to where like I almost want to pair this with food. It's drinkable, even at 114 proof. It's still very approachable, very drinkable, and it makes me just think, what would this pair well with? And when it comes to food, the first thing that comes to my mind is something that's maybe a little bit more bland. So I don't know that I'd want to pair this with steak. I'm sure it's nothing wrong with that, but I'm leaning more towards like maybe some type of pasta or sushi or something like that, that's a little bit more bland, like rice, pasta noodles, whatever, that the flavors from the whiskey are going to help enhance that a little bit. And I would love to try that. I'm not really a food pairing person, but I can be one today. Let's finish this one off. So I'll say, in terms of ratings, I feel like I'm on the fence between a 93 and a 94. Either way, fantastic scores for me, fantastic whiskey. I'm going to go ahead and lean it to the 94 side, so I'll rate it 94 out of 100 officially. And the reason for that is purely because of how rich and how much depth that nose has. The palate, obviously, like I said, follows that, and then the overall experience. The fact that I can enjoy this on a regular day, nothing wrong with that. I can enjoy this when I have a little bit more time with it, and I might have more notes that come out of that. I can bring it out when we have friends and family over and let them try it. Somebody maybe that's more of a wine drinker, I think they would enjoy it. It would open it up for them maybe. You know, it checks all the boxes. And then again, further the experience by pairing it with food, possibly. This whiskey is able to do a lot of things that I can't do with other bottles, or I just choose not to do, or not a fan of doing with other bottles. But this one, because of that overall experience that it's providing, again, how rich the nose is, if I'm on the fence, those things are going to push me over to a 94. This is a great product, and I've said this a million times. I said it earlier in this video, but just because a bottle of whiskey is sent to me does not mean I'm going to say that it's that good unless I really think it's that good. If you're not really into finished whiskeys, I don't know that this would change your mind. I would still suggest trying it, but you know, if you just kind of have that where you just want straight whiskey, that's one thing. But if you're kind of open to just good whiskey in general, I don't know. I don't feel like Our Truth missed on this one at all. I feel like they checked every box. They did a fantastic job. And again, that's just my own personal opinion. It has nothing to do with anything. I get to go down to the distillery tomorrow, like I said. It's going to be a great time, but regardless of all that stuff, this is just a good whiskey. It just is for me. If you've had this, if you got a chance to find it, I know it is a limited release. I'm in Indiana, so it is a little bit easier to find. I have seen some of these sitting out on the shelf, but if you've had it, I'm curious what other people's thoughts are. Because it's limited, I know not everybody watching this is gonna get a shot at it, but you know, I'm just curious. And if you haven't had this particular one, have you had other Hard Truth products, and what are your thoughts on those? Because again, that Sweet Mash Rye, they're just original product. I mean, that's a fantastic rye whiskey in my opinion as well. When people say, I don't really care for rye whiskey, I like bourbon, the next thing I suggest is typically a Hard Truth product. So great job, Hard Truth. Fantastic job. Excited to see what's in the future, whether it's finishing, bourbon, whatever else. I said earlier in another video, link it up here, that, you know, one of the things I was looking forward to was the Bottled and Bond series, getting those bottles this year. I can't wait to go down to the distillery tomorrow. I will definitely shoot some footage and all that stuff, and you know, post that video on here for you all to see that experience as well. Cannot wait. Fantastic distillery. Try anything from them, and I think you'll be happy with it. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate all the support as always, and I will see you in the next review. Cheers.